but there was something I read too that basically when we talk about that, there's actually a specific, there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of time on their hands, but there's like a psychologist that basically said, that's where we get our ability to adapt to certain situations. That trait comes back to whatever we consider normal. Then we no longer, we no longer perceive it as a threat, if you will. So in other words, if you were a caveman and you realized if you were in that, and I take it as a similar thing to being in a combat zone, if everybody's trying to kill you all the time, like you adapt to that being the new norm. Yeah. So in this case, if you're a caveman and everything, as soon as you step outside your cave and everything's trying to eat you.
So you just know, you need to be aware of it. And
yeah, you just basically, you're so accustomed to that happening that the body will adapt to that. And so you're not going to burn yourself out with adrenaline or, be so stressed out that I need to, take a personal day or whatever it is that, these hipster kids or whatever do these days, day.
Right. That'd be great.
Yeah. Stress cards or whatever they called them in the military, whatever. So our bodies will adapt to that and being in certain environments, and if people don't believe that, you only know what is the norm. So like, for example, I could take somebody that's in a really, crappy part of, a war-torn republic of, South Africa. Uh-huh. And they are so used to being being in a war and being that, mindset and, basically just trying to survive, that you can bring them over to what we would consider like in our, in the military being like a hard test. So like an obstacle course, for example, and they run through it like it's nothing. And you're like, oh my, you're a superhero. How did you do that or whatever? And they're like, I do an obstacle course when I walk to my, local corner store to to get a gallon of milk. So it's all depends on what area you're from or whatever. It's,
be horrible.
Yeah. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, shoot, move, and communicate is what they used to say in the Army or whatever. Being able to, duck and dive and do all this kind of stuff and run from one point to another and return fire and all this kind of stuff. Well, if you got to do that to go down to your local 7-Eleven, which dare I say it, there are some cities here in the United States that might be getting to that point.
I think there's already,
but you become accustomed to that situation. So it's not really, so when you find yourself in, in some other situation that's, say some type of test in the military, you would do well with that. And you're just like, that's normal, right? We only know what we think is normal, what we perceive as normal as children. If, you had some kind of crazy dad that, from the time you were 7 years old, had you, doing monkey bars and lifting weights. And it's like that crazy, I can't remember whether that was like the, Ukrainian kid or Russian kid or whatever. That's like had all the muscles. He looked like a mini Arnold Schwarzenegger and he was only like 9 years old or something. He's like this Diesel.
Yeah. I think
you remember that kid or whatever. Well, I can't even remember where he was from, but I felt like he was some Eastern Bloc country or something, but Super Diesel. Well, his dad literally had him working out from the time he was like, 5 months old or something, like something crazy. Like he was, grabbing his little arm in the crib and like making him trying to lift weights or something. So that kid only ever knew, like, as that being like the norm or whatever.
Right.
And so you get accustomed to it and your body gets accustomed to it and like whatever else. So if you're raised that way, you just assume that that's normal. Very small example of that is it's like country kids going to the military have a lot easier time when it comes to field problems, what we call field problems. So you have some kid from the city, not knocking them, but they've never camped out in their lives.
Right. Yeah.
Or they've never, tried, hiding, in woods or like whatever, skill that you're required for, what we call field training, where you're actually going out to the field, you're doing like war games, if you will.
Uh-huh.
Obviously the country kids are going to have way better advantage because not all of them, but, ones that's hunted and fished and spent time in the woods and knew how to walk and, walk in the woods, be quiet to sneak up on deer, like whatever. Mm-hmm. That's just how they were raised. But that is a distinct advantage given the task at hand per se.
Right.
But with that being said, there's also, some of those kids might be backwards. They're not really good public speakers or like whatever. The kids from the city grew up, basically being put on the spot and being able to have to communicate constantly with people. once they get that to that level in the military where they're like a leader, they're going to do better on promotions or boards because now they're a more effective leader. They can communicate better because they're used to dealing with people and they deal with people from all walks of life kind of thing. So there's advantages and disadvantages of being raised a certain way.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.